What I'm fixing to show you may be very disturbing to some of you. I ask that you listen to me all the way through because this is 100% true. It is not fake. There is a book written about Baron Trump, and his dad is the last president of the Republic of the United States.
What if a book written in 1896 predicted the election of President Donald J. Trump?
John Trump, do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
Not just his rise to power, but the political chaos and division that would unfold around his presidency? What if this same book contained details so shockingly accurate that it feels as if someone traveled through time and recorded the events of today, more than 125 years ago? At first, it seems impossible, something pulled from a conspiracy theory or a work of speculative fiction. Yet this book exists. Written by Ingersoll Lockwood, The Last President tells the story of a nation in shock after the unexpected victory of a political outsider. The political elite never saw it coming, and suddenly, protests erupt across the country. Panic spreads through Wall Street and Washington as the ruling class realizes that their influence may be slipping away.
A few days ago, while doing some late-night research, I stumbled upon something really interesting. It was a novel written in 1896 called The Last President. I've read a lot of things, but this one caught me off guard. At first, it seemed like just another obscure piece of historical fiction, but the more I dug into it, the more fascinated I became. It was almost like a warning from the past about what could happen in our near future.
Hey everyone, check out our clothing store, DareToBeReal.store, for bold, unapologetic fashion. You'll get up to 40% off at the store, plus an extra 10% off with code DTR10. Shop now, link in the description. One of the most eerie details in Lockwood's book describes mobs of protesters marching toward a luxurious Fifth Avenue hotel, fearing that the newly elected president would destroy their way of life. Today, Trump Tower stands on Fifth Avenue, the headquarters of a man who built his presidency on defying the political establishment. But the connections don't stop there. Lockwood also wrote 2 earlier books about a boy named Baron Trump, an aristocratic young man living in a castle called Castle Trump, guided by a mentor named Don. These details make it difficult to dismiss the uncanny parallels. The real question is, was Lockwood merely guessing at political trends, or was he predicting something deeper about America's future? While his books have only recently gained mainstream attention, Ingersoll Lockwood was not just another obscure author. He was a lawyer, political writer, and diplomat, active in the late 19th century. Having worked in Washington, he advised the government on legal matters and even served as a U.S. ambassador to the Austro-Hungarian Empire. His political insights were sharp, and his writings reflected a deep understanding of power and governance. Lockwood's books take on a strangely prophetic tone when compared to modern events. His lesser-known works, Baron Trump's marvelous underground journey and travels and adventures of Little Baron Trump and his wonderful dog Bulger, introduce a young aristocrat named Baron Trump who embarks on surreal adventures. The character is described as wealthy, intelligent, and raised in an extravagant residence known as Castle Trump. He is guided by a wise and influential mentor named Don, who leads him through a series of life-changing experiences. The fact that Donald Trump's youngest son is named Baron, and that Trump Tower can be compared to a modern-day castle, makes these books even more mysterious. Lockwood's works may have been inspired by the political climate of his time, but the uncanny resemblance to real-life figures and events raises serious questions about their significance. Did Lockwood anticipate the rise of an outsider president like Trump? Or was he merely observing a cycle in history that has played out time and time again? The novel The Last President begins on November 3, 1896, the night of an election that sends shockwaves through the country. A populist outsider is declared the winner, throwing the political elite into disarray. Protesters flood the streets and chaos erupts. The city of New York is shaken, with mobs storming toward a grand Fifth Avenue hotel, convinced that the newly elected leader will dismantle their way of life. The parallels between the book and real-life events are striking. The 2016 and 2024 presidential elections brought forth a similar kind of upheaval. Donald Trump's victories were met with widespread protests, media backlash, and political turmoil. Many in the establishment saw him as a threat to the existing system, just as Lockwood's fictional president was feared by the ruling class. The media plays a significant role in both the novel and reality, amplifying fears about the new leader and stoking divisions among the people. In Lockwood's book, the political class works tirelessly to suppress and undermine the outsider president, just as Trump faced impeachments, legal battles, and ongoing efforts to prevent his return to office. The most haunting question remains: was Lockwood's novel an eerie foreshadowing of America's political future, or was he simply capturing the timeless struggle between populism and the establishment? One of the most mysterious details in The Last President is the reference to a Fifth Avenue hotel that becomes a target of political unrest. The book describes mobs marching toward this building, outraged by the election results and fearful of the changes the new president will bring. In real life, Trump Tower stands on Fifth Avenue, and since Trump's entrance into politics, it has been the site of protests, demonstrations, and political clashes. After the 2016 election, protesters filled the streets of New York, with many gathering outside Trump Tower in a display of resistance. The same scenes played out in 2020 and 2024, as Trump's political movement continued to shake the foundations of Washington. This striking connection raises the question: was Lockwood merely writing fiction, or did he somehow glimpse into the future? The idea that a book written over a century ago could contain such precise details is difficult to dismiss. Even if Lockwood was not making a direct prediction, his work reveals an understanding of how history repeats itself. His depiction of a nation torn apart by political change is just as relevant today as it was in the 19th century. Before Lockwood wrote The Last President, he published a series of books about a boy named Barron Trump, an aristocratic child who embarks on fantastical journeys with his mentor, Don. These stories, initially intended as children's literature, take on a much deeper meaning when viewed in light of Trump's presidency. The connections are undeniable. Donald Trump's youngest son is named Barron, a name that was relatively uncommon before Trump made it famous. In the books, Barron Trump is wealthy, intelligent, and constantly at odds with the world around him. He is guided by an older figure named Don, whose wisdom leads him through challenges and discoveries. Could these books be a bizarre coincidence, or was Lockwood tapping into something far stranger? The notion that he somehow envisioned a family named Trump playing a pivotal role in American politics stretches the limits of belief. While some may dismiss these connections as random chance, others argue that there is more to Lockwood's writings than meets the eye. As Donald Trump returned to the White House in 2025, his re-election marked one of the most polarizing and consequential events in American history. His comeback reshaped not only the political landscape, but also the very foundations of government, much like the newly elected leader in The Last President. Trump's second presidency came after years of political warfare, media battles, and legal fights aimed at preventing him from returning to power. In Lockwood's book, the outsider president also faces relentless opposition from the elite, political class, and financial interests who see his leadership as a direct threat. The similarities do not stop there. Trump's policies reflect many of the changes feared by the establishment in Lockwood's novel. His renewed focus on nationalism, economic self-sufficiency, and dismantling bureaucratic power has sent shockwaves through Washington and Wall Street. His promise to hold government agencies, intelligence operatives, and corporate elites accountable has drawn resistance from within his own administration. The echoes of The Last President are undeniable. Both in fiction and reality, the ruling class desperately seeks to prevent the outsider from enacting his agenda. But the bigger question looms. Will Trump's second term be the moment that changes America forever? In Lockwood's book, the new president represents the end of an era, a shift so drastic that it sends the nation spiraling into upheaval. With many political analysts warning that the United States is at a breaking point, it is hard not to wonder if we are living through that same moment today. One of the most alarming predictions in The Last President is the economic collapse that follows the outsider's victory. In the novel, the stock market crashes, bankers panic, and the financial system is thrown into turmoil. The new leader's policies disrupt Wall Street's control, threatening the influence of the financial elite. In real life, Trump's presidency has seen significant economic shifts that mirror the novel's warnings. His policies focus on reducing American reliance on global financial institutions, bringing back manufacturing jobs, and challenging the Federal Reserve's control over the economy. These initiatives have been met with extreme resistance from corporate leaders, investment firms, and banking elites, much like in the book. Lockwood's novel also describes protests and riots erupting as financial panic sets in. Today, economic instability, rising inflation, and fears of a global recession have led to a similar sense of uncertainty. Many believe that Trump's presidency represents a last stand against globalist economic policies, a fight between sovereignty and multinational control. The question remains, is this economic turbulence a necessary transformation, or are we heading toward an irreversible collapse? Lockwood's book suggests that a powerful shift in leadership always comes with financial chaos. Whether Trump's policies will restore economic independence or accelerate instability is a debate that is still unfolding. The title, The Last President, raises a haunting question. What does it mean? Some believe it suggests that Trump is the final leader of the United States as we know it, marking the end of the old political system and the beginning of something entirely different. Others speculate that Lockwood's book symbolizes the last true populist president, a leader who governs for the people rather than the elite. There are historical patterns that reinforce these fears. In past civilizations, political transformations often come at the height of division and unrest. The fall of the Roman Republic, the end of the British monarchy's absolute rule, and the collapse of various historical empires all began with a shift in leadership and the breakdown of institutional trust. Trump's presidency has exposed deep fractures in the American system. The divide between traditional governance and populist movements has never been more apparent. The growing distrust in elections, government agencies, and media institutions suggests that something much larger than a single presidency is at stake. If the last president is an omen of what's to come, does it mean that the United States is about to undergo a complete transformation? And if so, what comes next? The debate over Lockwood's book remains as controversial as ever. Was he simply a brilliant political observer, outlining patterns that have repeated throughout history? Or did he tap into something far more mysterious, foreseeing events long before they happened? Some argue that Lockwood was writing political satire, meant to reflect the fears of his time. The late 1800s were a period of economic turmoil, political realignment, and populist revolts, similar to today. His book may have been a fictional warning about what happens when a powerful outsider challenges the ruling elite. Others take a more mystical approach. The strange accuracy of the names, locations, and events described in The Last President has led some to speculate about time travel, hidden knowledge, or even divine prophecy. The idea that a man in the 19th century could so perfectly describe events playing out today is too eerie to ignore. Whether one sees Lockwood as a visionary or just a man ahead of his time, the fact remains that his book contains elements that are undeniably relevant to modern politics. The biggest question of all remains, what comes after Trump? If Trump's presidency is as transformative as Lockwood's book suggests, then his legacy will not end when he leaves office. Some believe that the Trump era is just the beginning of a larger political movement that will continue for generations. The possibility of a Trump presidency, perhaps even Barron Trump stepping into politics, has been widely speculated. Lockwood's earlier books featuring Barron Trump suggest that the next generation of the Trump family could carry on his mission. Whether Barron himself chooses a political path remains uncertain, but the idea of a Trump dynasty reshaping American politics is very real. Beyond the Trump family, the broader movement he represents, nationalism, economic independence, and anti-globalism, is likely to persist. Even if Trump is the last president in the traditional sense, the political realignment he has triggered will continue to shape the future. As America stands at a historical crossroads, The Last President forces us to consider whether we are witnessing the beginning of a new era or the final days of a system that is breaking apart. One thing is certain, the story isn't over yet. Was The Last President a warning from history, a prediction of things to come, or just an extraordinary coincidence. Some dismiss the book as random fiction, while others argue that Lockwood foresaw a major shift in American politics that is only now unfolding. The strange details, the name Trump, the reference to a leader fighting the establishment, the mobs on Fifth Avenue, are impossible to ignore. Regardless of one's beliefs, Trump's presidency has reshaped America in ways that will be felt for generations. The battle between globalism and nationalism, populism and the establishment, the old system and a new future is at its peak. And just like the last president, the real-life story of Trump's rise to power is still being written. The only question that remains is, what happens next?